Hello, hello, hello.
Hi! Welcome back to High on History.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Liz.
And today, I'm getting into the medical history of the Sun King, Louis XIV, or as I'm going to refer to him as here on out, as Louis the Sickly. This man, surprisingly lived an extremely long life. He was like 77 years old when he actually died in 1715, and that was from gangrene. Now I'm going to get to that here in a little bit. But, so, the cool thing about Louis the Sickly's medical history is that it's extremely well documented. That's also kind of the tragic point of, like, the medical history of the royals is they were guinea pigs for some of the most earliest medical treatment because they could afford the doctors. So his medical history was of extreme interest to both his royal court as well as the public. And his records were open to everybody to have access to. Like, they were printed in these pamphlets. So, like, everybody knew what was going on with the king's health at any given moment. And he suffered from many chronic illnesses, and they were constantly exuberated by...
Exasperated?
Exasperated. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. By medical practices. He was prone to renal colics as well as vertigo. At the age of 9, he had smallpox. By the time he was 17, he had gonorrhea. He survived typhoid fever at 22. 24, he had measles. I'll get into the story about measles because at that same time, he ended up losing, like, a good chunk of his family, and it was kind of tragic. At 32, he had a tapeworm, and at 47, we're going to get into the big medical history of the surgery that he had on probably the most well-documented medical procedure of the time. But I'm saving that for a little bit. First and foremost, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail with some medical history. So at this point, if you are squeamish, don't like medicine, skip ahead. We will leave a timestamp down below in the description. So
we'll cover Versailles next.
Yep. So then you can skip ahead to Liz's topic. Now, I'll give you a few seconds to hit that description button and get down into that timestamp if you need that second, and go. 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you skipped. Now, here we are with the fistula. Now, a fistula is actually an abnormal tunnel that has formed in between two organs where a connection does not belong. So this is like when two organs grow together, and then there's a tunnel that usually leads to like abscesses, inflammatory bowel disease, and then usually they're triggered in modern day. To get a fistula, it's usually some sort of severe injury that causes it, surgery malpractice, or also radiation treatment nowadays can give you a fistula. So that was kind of cool. I compare modern medicine to the ancient medicine because they didn't have the technology that we do now.
Right.
So I'm going to use modern terms for what was going on way back when, so then we kind of have a comparison of like...
Do we know what caused his?
We do, actually, and I'm going to get into that. But first, we're going to talk about my worst nightmare, tooth decay, and that first fistula that he has, because he's got 2 of them. But before I get into his face fistula, we're going to talk, the fistula is usually very painful. There's a lot of pus and drainage. It is a really not a good thing. That's usually got reoccurring infections, and it always requires some sort of medical intervention.
Okay.
So, my nightmare, tooth decay. So when he was a young man in 1685, he had to get a tooth extracted. It was a typical rotten tooth.
Right.
Like, a standard procedure, just go get that sucker yanked nowadays. Well, he went in, and the extraction ended up resulting in pretty much the entire removal of all of his top teeth, including leaving a hole between his hard palate and his sinus cavity.
Oh, jeez.
So they pretty much cleft his palate.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was constantly infected. He was constantly having problems with his nose. Yeah. Now I'm going to skip away from the fistulas just for a second because I need a break after talking about the teeth. Oh god, that makes me cringe just talking about that. But so we're gonna jump into his gastrointestinal and rectal history. But before we get into his anal fistula, word of the day. So Louis the Sickly had a very voracious appetite. He suffered from obesity, and we do believe that he possibly had type 2 diabetes. He was definitely overweight, and he suffered from a lot of bacterial and viral infections that were not known back then, but we do believe nowadays he suffered from salmonella poisoning, E. coli, Campylobacter listeria.
Ah.
So that's listeria. He suffered from what we call the cafeteria germ, which would be just from ill preparation and leaving hot food out for too long. And also possibly the norovirus. And then those viruses, I'm almost positive he suffered from because the description of a lot of his illnesses was fever, digestive upset, bloody stool. He had a lot of problems that came with being constantly infected with these viruses. There is a possibility of hepatitis A, but he didn't seem to have any jaundice symptoms that come from Hep A.
Okay.
Yeah. According to stool analysis in the private toilet of the Sickly King, there was a tapeworm. And in order to treat his tapeworms, he had enemas, upwards of 2,000 enemas.
Oh my god.
In 6 months.
Oh my god.
Bro was flushed. So, as a part of all those treatments, besides the enemas, there were the humors. And I wanted to talk about the humors. They are a very vital medical topic that were founded 2,000 years ago by Hippocrates?
Hippocrates.
Yes, the Greek physician. Now, the body, according to Hippocrates, consisted of 4 cardinal fluids or humors. A good, healthy balance would be all your humors are equally balanced. If you were sick, you were imbalanced. So blood was air, and it is like hot and moist. A person with a predominance of blood is characterized as a cheerful, optimistic, and courageous person. Yellow bile was fire, and it was considered hot and dry. Somebody who had a high yellow bile was usually hot to temper, they were ambitious, and they were really irritable usually. Black bile was related to earth, it was cold and dry. People were said to be more melancholic, prone to sadness and depression, they were introspective, and they were creative by nature. And actually, melancholy comes from the Greek word for black bile.
Interesting. Yeah,
That was a fun fact that I found. I didn't know that either. So
That's
fun
cool.
fact of the day. Woo! You get 2 of those. And then phlegm was water, and that was cold and moist. And usually, if you had a high phlegm concentration in your body, you were calm, unemotional, pretty placid.
That just sounds like allergies.
Right?
Like, I can't do anything. It's fine.
And this theory dominated Western medicine for 2,000 years. And prescribers, so Louis' doctors, would prescribe him foods and herbs and activities that would balance his humors. So, for example, if you were somebody who had a high concentration of yellow bile, and you would be eating something that would be associated with phlegm, which is cold and moist. So it's the opposites that would cool your hot and dry temper. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that is sound medical theory right there.
Great medical theory. And treatment for this was, of course, bloodletting, leeches, and cupping, which, I mean, cupping is pretty much bloodletting. And also purging. They would give you, I guess we would call it charcoal nowadays, or we would use charcoal, but it would basically be something that they would ingest that would make them vomit profusely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was all believed to clean out the bowels and the bile.
Yep.
And of course, it only works. There are times to do that, but it only works in very specific circumstances. And you're doing your internal natural gut bacteria a bunch of damage when you do that a bunch.
Right. And if you are going to purge, do it right. Seek a medical professional's attention too. Mm-hmm. Do it safely nowadays. There's practices that allow you to purge yourself safely. So another kind of fun fact, blood was called St. Green, yellow bile was called choleric, black bile was obviously melancholic, and phlegm was phenomic, pneumatic. Wait, pneumatic.
Pneumonic, like pneumonia?
Pneumatic.
Okay.
These were medieval diagnosis terms for what bile you had, but now these are terms to use and describe your personality traits, which I find was kind of cool, watching the evolution of how humors went from a physical medicine to more of a mental health diagnosis instead. Now, we're going to get into the most famous ailment that Louis XIV had, and that was his anal fistula. So, what caused this fistula was poop getting trapped in a part of his gut that just didn't flush out properly, and it just became infected. It was probably a seed got stuck in his rectum, and that's how most of them actually happen still to this day. If something gets caught, it doesn't go out, it punctures the wall of your rectum, and then it forms into an abscess, and then it opens up into this massive, what becomes a fistula. And they are painful, they are chronically infected, there is no way around not seeking medical treatment for this. And in 1686, he underwent the surgery to fix this. This was a major turning point in medical history and in Louis's life, too. So he went under this surgery with no anesthetics. And the chief surgeon prepared for months, practicing on other people who have the same symptoms. He even created specialized tools. He made a specialized tool set just to perfect this surgery for the king.
And as I understand it, he experimented on several other people. He treated other people before he treated the king.
Yes. Yeah, that is what I just said. Yeah, that he had practiced on other people. And these were willing participants who needed the surgery anyway.
Right.
It wasn't like he was just picking random people and poking around at them.
No, but it's a terrible procedure, as I understand it. But not more terrible than the problem.
Yeah. Well, before this provider, Charles Francois Felix de Tessy, the treatment for it was a red hot poker. Yeah. Well, the first surgery was a success, but unfortunately, the son of a biatch decided to go horseback riding himself up. So he tore himself open, had to go in and get the surgery 2 more times.
Oh my gosh.
Before it was actually fully healed. Now, the third surgery, I couldn't actually find much on it because I didn't actually, spend that much time looking. But I'm kind of assuming that the third surgery was just because of how chronically infected that area can get due to the lack of hygiene they had back then.
Right.
So, to know that even though he went under this surgery 3 different times without anesthetics, he still came out alive and healed. The third surgery was the final success, too. It was such a success that people were going to this provider to get all sorts of surgeries. They made surgery a trend in Versailles for a little while after this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, like that's how important this surgery was. So not only did the king survive, it opened the door for medical professionals to start getting the practice, getting the ability to be trusted by patients.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like that, and that's why it's such a turning point. And now I don't know how accurate this quote can be because it was like 300 years ago, but it is said by the provider that King Louis bore the pain as steadfastly as possible. So that means that the king didn't flinch. He didn't scream, according to records. Like,
yeah, I heard he didn't say a word the whole time. Yeah, he was pretty stoic.
He had, I think it was Madame de Montespan. Maybe it was Montespan. It might have been Maintenon, who was there with him for the surgery.
Yeah, and she
and
also
she just held him while like in position while he went through the procedure without a problem. And that's just how the legend goes. At least I'm not in, like. Also, I didn't find
so the propaganda of the day. The propaganda of the day too tended to always make out like he could never be seen as less than perfection. He was the pageantry of his life. His image was more important than anything.
Right.
And this may have seeped into the medical records. You never do know.
Right. And now to break away from that horror story, we're going to talk about some of the other chronic conditions that he had. He suffered from rheumatism, gout, he suffered from headaches, malaria, because as we'll learn with Liz, malaria was common because of it being built in a mosquito-infested swamp.
Yeah.
And he was also prone to urinary tract infections. Now, I mentioned he had contracted measles at the age of 24. So that was in 1712. That's when he lost his grandson, the Duke of Burgundy, as well as pretty much all of their children, except his great-grandson, Louis XV. Now, Louis XIV was severely overweight, and he died of poor circulation due to being bedridden on September 1st of 1715. And the poor circulation was actually from him rotting in his bed with gangrene on what he actually referred to as his pretty leg. Yeah, it was also okay. You know all the famous portraits of Louis the 13th or 14th, how he has that one leg forward.
Yeah,
that's his rotting leg. Yeah. So they don't actually know what caused the gangrene, but due to his diet and his habits as being just unhygienic king of the 1700s and all of the ill-prepared foods, they do believe that type 2 diabetes is what caused the gangrene. Now, if you know anything about diabetes, we have to be really careful with our legs and our feet.
Yeah.
Like, diabetes patients are very prone to get rotting feet. I don't know why. I don't know I don't actually know all that. So I kind of agree with what we know about modern medicine, that possibly if Louis really did have diabetes, then more than likely that's what caused the gangrene.
I had wondered, because what I'd wondered was if it had been caused by the surgeries.
Yeah, no, gangrene started out on the leg, somewhere probably due.
So that's probably diabetes, yeah.
Yeah. So upon his death, his corpse was divided in 3 different ways, and that was tradition for the French king. So Louis's heart was embalmed and was placed in Église des Jesuits on Rue Saint-Antoine in Paris, and during the French Revolution, his heart was stolen. And it ended up in the possession of Archbishop of York, Lord Harcourt. Now, In 1848, according to Ripley's Believe It or Not, in 1848, William Buckland was visiting Lord Harcourt and decided to eat the mummified heart of Louis XIV.
Oh!
Okay, so the story behind William Buckland is this dude was a scientist, a hunter. He was kind of like an all-around philanthropist. And he had vowed that he was going to eat a piece of every living animal on this planet. So, I mean, yeah. Ew. But yeah, according to Ripley's Believe It or Not, that King Louis' heart was eaten. And that was the end of my medical history. Yeah.
Wow!
Yeah. Yeah, that was insane.
Oh, yeah, so pre-revolutionary France, in fact, the whole Renaissance era is just such a weird tale of beauty and horror in very much equal measure. Because now we're going to move on to something slightly more pleasant.
But before we move into Versailles, I want to point out, Louis was entirely sick the entire time that he puts on the pageantry.
Oh, yeah.
In Versailles.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz is going to get into the pageantry that Louis gets into.
A little bit. We're going to do a little bit.
Not today, but...
some of it today. We've got... so you can't cover Versailles in one episode, not if you're going to keep the episode in any kind of length. And, I don't know how long we've been going, but...
It looks like 22 minutes.
Okay. All right. Louis XIV was 27 years old when he decided to build his palace, and he picked this marshy little out-of-the-way nowhere village called Versailles. The reason he picked this village was because his father had a hunting lodge there, and he had spent part of his childhood playing and hunting in the woods in his father's old hunting lodge, so he was very sentimental about the place. And the problem was, it was a marshland. So, as you mentioned, there's mosquitoes everywhere. The chateau that he wanted his palace built around and with was on a hill, so it wasn't on level ground.
Right.
And so there was just no good way to build this thing he wants. And he hired the best.
Oh, he sure did.
He hired Louis Laveau, his chief architect, Charles Lebrun, painter and decorator, and André Lenotre, master gardener. And then later... so Louis Laveau did most of the main design. Mm-hmm. And his first design, he comes in, he shows the king, and the big problem with the design, it's beautiful, but the big problem is it gets rid of the chateau.
Tears it down.
And that is not what Louis wanted. Louis had always envisioned
keeping the chateau
as part of the palace. He wants that to be part of the palace. And it's actually his mistress at the time, and I cannot remember which mistress he had at the time.
Probably Montespan. He was with her for 10 years. So I'm pretty sure it was Montespan. It might have been.
I know it was one of his first mistresses.
They were super, but I don't have that deck out.
They were super into each other, and it was actually her who suggested
the envelope design?
The envelope design to the architect. So that,
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was her idea.
It was in one of the documentaries we watched, and I was super surprised also.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, she was a clever, intelligent
It must have been Montespan then, because Montespan was political, she was ambitious, she was all that in a bag of chips.
She really was. She really, really was, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
So anyway, she comes up with the envelope design. Louis Laveau goes back, redesigns it all. He comes back now. Louis XIV was pretty much going to make this marshland do what he wanted it to do. It's like part of his pageantry, part of what he needed to show his absolute command of all of France, is that he was going to make this marshland work for him come heck or high water. Right. And he very much did. They knocked down hills. They redirected the Seine River.
They did so much. They got full-grown trees in from...
Right. So Louis had this amazing garden idea.
Beautiful garden idea.
Yeah. And his landscaper, this André Lenotre, had this notion to make each part of the gardens, to expand the gardens and to make each one of them just like a room, and then you would bring in all these statues and fountains and trees as if you were decorating a room, and this is how the gardens were made. Well, they didn't want to wait for saplings to grow. That can take a really long time, longer than a human lives in many cases. So they built this rolling contraption. Yeah. They dug up fully grown trees, wheeled them down the countryside, planted them, and then sometimes that didn't work and they had to actually pick them up again and replant them, and they did this several times. Yeah. Orange trees, almond trees, all sorts of trees that don't actually grow anywhere near Versailles at all. Yeah. So, but they did that and it worked really well. The only thing that didn't work about the gardens is the fountains. Yeah. There are lots and lots and lots of them. And even with this very cool turning wheel contraption that they wound up using at some point, you could not get enough water to the system to run all the fountains at once. Yeah. And I looked this up. I wanted to know, like, modern solutions to ancient problems. Did we ever fix this? No. No, you still cannot run all the fountains at once at Versailles.
Wow.
Yeah, and you certainly couldn't leave them running. They actually do the same thing today that they did then, which is wherever the event is, wherever the people are, they turn those fountains on and they leave the others off.
Wow.
And really they can't update some parts of the plumbing in ways that could fix that.
I heard that one of the solutions that Louis was looking at was kind of the Roman architecture of the aqueduct, and was going to ship in water.
They were going to build an aqueduct, and even Louis was like, "Oh yeah, no, that's gonna hurt the coffers," and with good reason, because this palace, Versailles, wound up costing 200 million livres in its own time. So.
Roughly. There's no actual historical coffer that says exactly 200 million.
But the cost is estimated to be about 200 million livres, which in US dollars today is approximately $300 billion. Yeah. Now, Louis saw this entire project as one piece.
Yeah.
So the gardens, the palace, in Louis's mind, he wouldn't have wanted people to focus on specific features. It was all one grand theater that was to the glory of him, and ergo to the glory of France, and also to the glory of God.
He wanted to put himself on the world stage. He wanted France to be front and center of the world.
Absolutely. But in his mind, he didn't just want these things. It was almost without hubris that he believed he was completely entitled to these things because he was raised to believe that.
Oh yeah, his mama called him the Sun King.
Yeah, he was likened to Apollo by Cardinal Mazarin. Way back when he was 9-10 years old. So he was raised with this propaganda about himself that he believed absolutely. Yeah. So what was to the glory of him was ergo to the glory of God.
Right.
And thus for the glory of France. And just, this was an absolute belief. If you or I believed that, we would be arrogant, hubris, and delusional.
Right.
But in Louis's case, it required none of those things.
Right. He was literally told that from the minute he was
born.
From
the minute he was born. So, that said, maybe one of the most famous features of Versailles is worth mentioning all by itself, and that is the Hall of Mirrors. The Hall of Mirrors is 357 panels of the finest Venetian mirror in the world. There were no better mirrors to be had in the world. And Louis specifically was trying to be more magnificent than the Phoenicians. He wanted his glory to outshine Rome and Venice. He wanted to make the most glorious palace in the world, and arguably he did accomplish that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not fair to compare Versailles to some other palaces, other places in the world. For example,
Buckingham?
No. It's certainly more fabulous than Buckingham. I was thinking about the Forbidden City.
Oh.
Like, you can't compare Versailles to the Forbidden City. They're very different, but they are equally magnificent, one might say.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I feel that.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely the most magnificent palace in Europe at his time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in order to get those Venetian mirrors, he needed the Venetian craftsmen and merchants to get him those mirrors. And they did that, and the Venetians themselves were upset about this. And so some of those that aided him in the creation of the Halls of Mirrors were murked later.
Fun.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So, that happened. According to rumor, Venetian agents tracked some of them down and silenced them permanently.
Yes.
So right away, even before it's finished being built, although, as I understand it, I could be wrong about this, I did not fact check this specifically, but the Hall of Mirrors was one of the last pieces. I mentioned that there had been 2 architects. Louis Laveau died before the project was finished, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, his protege was the one who added the Hall of Mirrors.
Correct. So, and it was one of the last features.
Yeah.
And his name was, hold on, let me get back to that. I didn't want to skip any of the names of the artists who worked on these.
Right. So what we were doing...
Jules Hardouin Monsart.
Nice.
Monsart, yeah. So he was the one who got the Hall of Mirrors installed, which I think is really, really cool. There were orange trees from Spain. Oh yeah, the gardens were also the gardens were in the shape of the cross. Something else to note about Louis XIV was that even as much as he loved his life of pageantry and theatricality,
he was very pious.
He was pious, and he was pious kind of right from the beginning. He wasn't super observant, but he was never anything less than a good Catholic at any point in his life, truly. Oh yes, I did want to get into this. So, all this money, all this building, all this glory comes at a cost.
Of course.
And it's a huge cost. It's 2 costs. First of all, that 200 million livres, they didn't really have that to spend. Louis XIV manages this entire time to also be engaged in multiple wars.
Yep, because war is profit.
Because war is, well, he wants war to be profitable.
But it's not in his case.
In his case, it doesn't wind up being as profitable as he needs it to be. Which is sad because he actually wins a bunch of his initial encounters. He doesn't start losing wars until later in life, but in the beginning,
Yeah.
he's out there and he is taking what he needs to take. The problem is, it just gives him more mouths to feed. It doesn't net him any riches.
Right.
And so these wars get costly fast.
Yeah.
And he's building this incredible palace. So tens of thousands of men worked in the most appalling conditions.
Yeah.
There's certainly no Ministry of Workforce Safety.
There's no OSHA.
There's no OSHA for these people. The guards come out at night and remove the dead bodies so that
the people didn't see them and have that despair. There was
right,
so many casualties.
just to keep them from being demoralized.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the soldiers come out and do this in the cover of darkness because also the work never stopped.
Yeah.
This was a 24/7 project. They worked literally day and night. They worked to death.
Yeah.
And they were still working on the palace when Louis starts doing the really, really interesting thing, which is to move in all the nobles into the palace.
Oh, yeah.
There's letters at the time. The women complained rather loudly, actually, because they had wet plaster in their hair. Everything smelled of plaster and mud and piss.
Yeah, everyone was relieving themselves in the hallway.
In the hallways, wherever they wanted. The bathroom facilities were...
for the nobles.
And there wasn't enough of them, really.
Yeah.
By the time Louis dies, in 1715, as you mentioned...
Yeah.
Versailles was home to more than 5,000 nobles.
Holy cow.
And 14,000 servants. So
wow.
It's a city in a building.
Wow. I did not realize there was that many people living there at that time.
And what we're going to cover next week, too, is quite a bit about the pageantry and the court that formed, because what Louis did, and this is, I just want to make this point tactically. So what Louis did that was so tactically brilliant, he had seen uprisings. In fact, he'd experienced one when he was 9 years old, as we covered last week.
Right.
And it scared the crap out of him for life. It really did. So as soon as Versailles becomes remotely livable, he demands all of his nobles come to him.
Yep. So then they can't cause an uprising on their properties.
And then he makes them jockey to do everything from handing him his fork to putting on
the cufflinks
of his shirt or his, cravat and so on. And there would be a different noble vying for position, and each of these positions had symbolic weight and value. So your importance to Louis was determined by what piece of clothing you were putting on or taking off of him. And this is very, very important. And in doing this, this is how he kept them from being at home, raising armies, and rising up against him. Yep. So it was tactically brilliant. He turned his court into a pageant in which he had absolute control over his kingdom in miniature, just right there.
Yeah.
And frankly, that kind of makes him a sort of brilliant king.
Really, he was brilliant.
He might have been sickly all the time, but he was not thoughtless.
No, he was very smart. He had a great kingdom, a great reign.
He did. He did.
Like, he was honestly not a bad king. Like,
he was not a great king either.
He wasn't great, but he wasn't by any means horrible. Like, he wasn't known as Louis the Horrible.
Right. I didn't see a lot of people being tortured in his court. Now Louis XV, that becomes
a whole different
story. But
the Sun King, I mean, he might have been sickly, but he wasn't like a monster by any means.
He certainly overspent.
Yeah.
He went to war. He was lavish in every single thing he did.
Yeah.
I forgot to look up the exact date in which he was born, but he's sort of the quintessential Leo. Like, I mean, just pointing that out. But oh, you're looking it up
I'm
now.
totally gonna look it up real quick.
Yeah.
Buy me some time while I'm silently over here tapping away.
So there was this great human toll. Many people died. But this magnificent palace served to keep control of a kingdom, and it did so through all of his life. Now, he becomes a different person later in life. And I don't mean different in that he ceased to be magnificent. Even his death was attended like theater. But we will see he becomes more pious, more thoughtful, and less into his appetites in his later years.
He was born on September 5th, 1638. So happy belated birthday.
Yeah, happy belated birthday. Does that make him... That's not Virgo, is it?
That, I believe, is a
That
Virgo.
is a Virgo.
My dad's a Virgo, and my dad's a third.
Okay, yeah, that's a Virgo.
So he's a Virgo.
Oh,
that makes sense.
That makes
the
attention to detail, that incredible attention to detail, and just the knowing.
That also makes his strategy for war make sense, too. Mm-hmm. That makes his battle plan make a lot more sense now, knowing that he's a Virgo, too. I don't normally care about zodiac signs for politicians and stuff, but glad that makes sense.
That does make sense. All right. So that's us for this week. We will return next week.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
That's right.
2-week channel now.
Oh, we need to do the plugs.
Oh, yep. The end of the episode plug. Woo!
All right, so first we are changing our schedule. We are going back to the every other week schedule. It is just too much. We cannot
budget it. We can't
budget it. We don't have
between work and personal life.
Yeah. And then big shout out to the founder of our feast. Every episode is
Green Health. Off Highway 99 in Eugene.
Yes. They are the ones that provide all of the part of history here for us, and we would like to thank them so much. Just, they're big supporters of the channel. We really appreciate them. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And,
that's
any other?
I think
we're good on the shout-outs.
I didn't see any comments. I forgot to look at comments if there were any. Anyways, leave a like, hit that like button, subscribe, comment, share us with your friends. We love you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.